Hey everyone, it's Chrono from the Headphone Show. Today with me I have the Moondrop Starfield. Let's check them out. Moondrop is an audio company that needs no introduction. After all, it feels as though in just about every price bracket they've got a top contender. In this review, we'll be taking a look at one of their entry-level models, the Starfield, which is using a single dynamic driver setup and retails for $109.99. So, does it sound as good as it looks? Well, we'll get to that briefly, but before that, let's go over the basics, starting off with packaging and accessories. Despite the Starfield being a fairly affordable IEM, it's clear to see that Moondrop cut no corners when designing the packaging for these earphones. The Starfield comes packaged in a slender box with a sleeve that depicts a starry night accompanied by the silhouette of what appears to be a manga-style character, very fitting of a Moondrop product. Getting past the sleeve, the inner box is decorated in blue with silver sparkles to match the Starfield's aesthetic design. It may not seem like much, but it's honestly great to see this level of attention to detail for an IEM at this price point, and it makes for a user experience that you'd only expect from more premium products. As for what's inside the box, you of course get the Starfield IEMs, a 3.5mm to 0.78 2-pin connector cable in blue to match the Starfield's finish, a black carrying case with gold Moondrop code text, 6 differently sized sets of silicone ear tips, and some replacement dust filters for the drivers. Moving on to build and comfort, it's clear that the Starfield stands head and shoulders above the competition for its build quality. The Starfield's chassis seems to me as though it's composed entirely out of aluminum, which makes them feel sturdy and inspires confidence that they won't have structural problems anytime soon. Then there is of course the Starfield's metallic blue-purple finish, which with its silver sparkle pattern creates a striking appearance with depth. Again, this makes the Starfield feel significantly more premium than what its price tag may suggest, and I'd love to see more companies showing this level of care for the presentation of their products. For comfort, the Starfield has a good mold that fits very nicely and is adequately contoured for the shape of the ear. Unfortunately though, like the Blessing 2, they're a bit on the larger side for IEMs, so I do think that they may cause some fit issues for users with smaller ears. Additionally, because of the all-aluminum chassis, they're fairly heavy, and whilst they weren't really fatiguing to wear, after having been recently testing headphones like the i100 Pro, I definitely start to miss the much more smaller form factor and the lighter weight of those headphones when compared to the Starfield. So to sum it up, the Starfield feels remarkably premium, but it does seem to come at the cost of some comfort. Not too long ago, I had the opportunity to spend some time with the Moondrop Blessing 2, which at $319.99 serves as my IEM benchmark for frequency response and technical performance. Naturally, this means that I was really looking forward to trying out the Starfield and seeing just how close it got to the Blessing 2 at a third of the price. Additionally, I was interested in checking out how they would compare to the i100 Pro from Sennheiser, which I personally really enjoy and is in a similar price bracket. For its overall sound signature, I think that the Starfield is fairly similar to the Blessing 2, although with a very noticeable lean towards the warmer side. Its bass response is full and present sounding, whilst its mid-range is very rich and lush. And then there's the treble, which can be interesting on the Starfield, but we'll discuss that briefly. Kicking things off with the bass response on the Starfield is very nicely contoured, with an accurate depiction of low tones. The Starfield has a very satisfying Harman-like bass shelf that really rounds out the bottom end by giving the sub-bass region good presence, whilst also bringing forth some of that deep, low-frequency rumble. Compared to the Blessing 2's bass shelf, I felt as though the Starfield packed a little more weight and warmth in the low end. This was something I really appreciated as it kept the bass very engaging but also clean, as this elevation only started off at around 100 to 120 Hz. In fact, of the IEMs I've tried, this one might have my favorite bass response. Despite enjoying the evenness that the Blessing 2 had when compared to some of the more mid-bass centric Sennheiser IEMs I've listened to, I always felt as though it could use just a bit more energy in the low end, and for me, the Starfield offered just that. Moving along to the mid-range, there is unfortunately not much for me to comment on, as it's just very good on the Starfield. Instrument and vocal fundamentals in the mid-range are well represented with an even and organic tonality that makes for some lush and rich mid-tones. Likewise, the presence region between 2 to 5K is neither forward nor laid back. It properly highlights the overtones in that region, although every now and then it did sound to me as though 3K may have had the slightest emphasis to it, but I doubt most listeners will find it shouty or harsh. Okay, now let's talk about the Starfield's highs. So whilst I love the bass and mid-range on the Starfield, it's in the treble region where it does start to lose some of its charm for me. The highs here are very warm, and for my taste and preferences, they're a touch too dark, enough to where I feel as though the harmonics that lie in this region just don't come through enough to contrast the rest of the mix. This, for me, made the Starfield sound somewhat stuffy or nasally, as it just didn't seem to have that top-end glisten and brilliance. Additionally, there is a bit of unevenness in the treble region here. At 5.5K, there was a slight bump there that made the transition between the upper mid-range to the lower treble range just a little bit harsh, whilst also introducing some noticeable glare. Then it also sounded to me as though there was a peak somewhere between 8 to 10K, which in combination with the lower treble bump did result in some low and mid-treble sibilance. Personally, I don't mind the treble being on the warmer side, and I know that some listeners will enjoy the more relaxed and laid-back highs. However, those narrow elevations that the treble has, I found could make the listening experience, and it, to be fair, could vary per instrumentation, just a little bit more fatiguing, even more so than on brighter headphones like the Blessing 2 or the IE100 Pro. Moving on to technical performance and starting off with resolution, the Starfield, I think, delivers performance that is suitable for its price bracket. Of course, it lags behind more high-end IEMs like the Blessing 2, but I did find that its internal resolution matches that of the IE100 Pro. One comment I will make is that I don't think that the darker treble region and the lack of upper treble extension helps the Starfield coming through as particularly resolving. Though, having said that, I did find that for the mid-range and for the bass region, it was pretty well structured and well defined, so it did adequately texture tones in those frequency ranges. Then for its soundstage imaging and layering, the presentation for the Starfield I found was pretty similar to that of the Blessing 2, very intimate and not particularly the most spacious. Nonetheless, I think that its soundstage and image depth performance lines up pretty closely with that of most IEMs, so whilst it doesn't exceed my expectations, I wouldn't say it performs poorly. Again though, like the Blessing 2, I will note that the imaging on the Starfield for me was just a little bit odd, as it felt as though everything was just shifted somewhat forward, so what I would have expected to be left or right was more like front left and front right. Lastly, we have dynamics, and when it comes to creating a sense of punch and slam, I think that the Starfield performs better than most, even when compared to other dynamic driver IEMs. The lows have a pretty satisfying kick to them, and they feel even more impactful than on the Blessing 2, likely due to the more generous bass shelf. Combined with the weighty snap and strike that it has in the top end, the Starfield definitely makes for an energetic and engaging listening experience. Okay, so now to wrap up this review, with its amazing build quality, its affordable yet premium user experience, its solid technical performance, and its good tonality, I feel as though the Moondrop Starfield brings a lot to the table for its price of $109.99, and it's definitely a set to keep an eye out on if you're looking for an entry-level IEM, especially when you consider that there's really not that many earphones out there with this good a tuning. Between the Starfield and the similarly priced IE100 Pro, which comes in at $99, I would personally gravitate more towards the latter, as I appreciate its higher degree of comfort and the more present but even treble region. Still, the Moondrop Starfield is an excellent choice for listeners who prefer a warmer sound signature and those looking for a well-rounded IEM alike. Anyways, that is all from me today. I hope you enjoyed this video or found it useful. If you did, do consider dropping a like. If you'd like to learn more about the Starfield or other headphones, I highly encourage you to check out the review section available on headphones.com. For more headphone audio content, stay tuned by subscribing to the Headphone Show, and until next time, this is Chrono signing off.